Hello, and welcome to a special Facebook Live where we're looking at the state of unemployment and answering your questions. I'm Marshall Terry with 90.7 WFAE. Today, we're talking with Kenny Colbert, President and CEO of the Employers Association, and Trisha Ridenour, Director of Human Resources with the Employers Association. That company provides human resource support to organizations. Welcome to you both.
Thank you for having us.
More than 600,000 North Carolina workers have filed for unemployment in the last month. Most of those are due to the fallout from the coronavirus pandemic. We're getting flooded with questions, Kenny and Trisha. I'm sure you are too, so let's jump right in. I want to start with some basics quickly. What is the difference between being laid off and being furloughed?
Well, generally speaking, those terms are interchangeable. A furlough means that the person is still attached to the payroll. They've not been separated, but they're just out of work on a temporary basis due to no work available. Layoff means the same thing, that you've been laid off. The issue is it a temporary layoff or is it a permanent layoff? A temporary layoff is the same as a furlough. A permanent layoff is a separation of employment.
So if someone's furloughed, can they still receive unemployment then in North Carolina?
Yes. As long as they meet the other requirements, the wage earnings in the base period, et cetera, then they should be able to draw unemployment.
There have been some changes to how North Carolina's unemployment works right now. If someone has been laid off or furloughed due to COVID-19, is there still a waiting period? And also, are they still required to look for work in order to get benefits?
Well, there were three big changes that Governor Cooper signed in an executive order several weeks ago. And this executive order kind of got lost in the shuffle because the executive order was the big one that shut down all of the restaurants. The second part of that executive order was related to unemployment. Three big changes. Number one is there is no longer a waiting period, and most states have a 1 week waiting period. North Carolina abolished that. The second is employees who are on or people who are drawing unemployment do not have to look for work. The thought behind that being is maybe they will get recalled by their employer in a few weeks and they won't leave the employer. And then the third thing is the benefits are non-charging to the employer. That's a huge benefit for employers.
Well, I was actually going to ask you about that because in normal times, something that a lot of people don't realize is that unemployment benefit do cost employers, right?
Exactly right. I mean, you're paying taxes on that and you have your own account and your employees are drawing off of that account. But in extraordinary times, the state will sometimes say, we will pay these claims, and that's one of the examples. And we're very fortunate right there that North Carolina has a huge war chest. Just from a little historical perspective, back in 2008, North Carolina had about $1 billion in its unemployment reserve fund, and it spent all of that money during the recession and had to borrow $2.1 billion from the federal government to pay all of the claims. So in 2013, there were significant changes made to the North Carolina employment system. And in essence, employers paid higher taxes, employees got reduced benefits. But as a result of that, there is now about a $3.8 billion war chest built up for unemployment claims. And as you just mentioned, 600,000 people have filed claims in the last month. So that war chest is being depleted fairly quickly.
Yeah, do we know where it is right now? How much is left?
I don't know. I have not looked. The last I saw, this was a couple of weeks ago, over $200 million were paid out right off the bat. So the issue comes down is this how long is this going to last? Is this going to be a 3 week or a 3 month deal? But a lot of people are saying, North Carolina should be paying more benefits. It should be a greater dollar amount. It should be a longer weekly benefit, et cetera. But the other side of the coin is we don't know how long this is going to last. Yeah, it's a huge war chest, but this money right now is kind of like throwing it up in the air and the wind taking it away. It's being evaporated that quickly.
A couple of the questions from the employer side of things right now. How are employers being notified about state and federal benefits right now?
I'm going to turn it over to, I can keep talking. Trisha, you want to take this one?
Everybody is getting their information, I think, from very same areas. We at the Employers Association are certainly watching for announcements and executive orders and things to come out. And then we go through that information and share it with our members. And I know there's many other types of resources. And so that's what we do, is we wait to see, we follow what's going on with the legislation and then get that information out. Certainly when companies go to the various agencies where there might be a need, for example, the Division of Employment Security, they would get information on that side as well as those changes are updated.
Are there any other changes for employers right now when it comes to unemployment benefits? We mentioned the doing away with the unemployment tax, right, and not having to pay for it right now. But are there any other big changes for employers right now?
Well, one that's in the works right now is attached claims. Generally, when someone loses their job, either on a temporary basis or either a long-term basis, permanent basis, they go file for unemployment themselves. North Carolina is encouraging attached claims where the employer files on behalf of the employees. And this is going to handle a couple of things. Is number one, it's going to reduce the volume of phone calls and emails and online contacts with the DES. Because if my company has just laid off 12 people, instead of 12 people calling, one person will call on behalf of those 12 people there. The second thing is, with all of these expanded benefits, you have some people who may be making more money in unemployment than when they were actually working. So in a few weeks or a month or so, when we get ready to call these people back to work, some people may mysteriously turn off their phones and not accept these phone calls because they're making more money being out of work than working. So one of the advantages of attached claims is if you call an employee back to work and they're a little reluctant to respond, since the employer is filing the claim, they can immediately cut off the claim at that point.
Are you hearing from businesses, or are businesses recommending employees do that if it's more beneficial for the employee to collect unemployment?
Yes, I think a lot of employers are being fairly generous at this particular point and saying, if you take a week of paid time, depending upon how much money you're making versus these enhanced employment benefits, a lot of people are getting raises. So it's always a difficult decision to lay somebody off from an employer standpoint. But it's a lot more comforting when you know that some of these employees' wages will be virtually even, or maybe even getting a slight increase. It makes that decision a lot easier.
And going back to the first part of that, the attached claims, I think is what you said. If the example you gave was great, if a company lays off 12 people and that employer can file on behalf of all 12 of those, it reduces the volume call at the Division of Employment Security. So I would imagine part of that is to speed up getting the benefits out, correct?
Exactly right.
Yeah.
It's been just a nightmare because, again, the DES was not prepared for this volume of phone calls and emails and online contacts, et cetera. My understanding is they're trying to hire about 150 people immediately to handle the volume. But we've heard stories of people saying, I've been trying for 3 days to file for unemployment. I can't get through.
Unemployment benefits from the state are just one of the resources available to workers right now. There are also benefits, of course, as part of the federal stimulus package. I got a couple of questions about the state benefits first. What's the maximum a person can get right now, and for how long?
Trisha, I'll let you talk for a second.
So in North Carolina, the maximum benefit is $350, and that is for 12 weeks. What's interesting is the duration could be anywhere from 12 to 20 weeks in North Carolina, and that's tied to unemployment. So the new unemployment report will be coming out for March at the end of April. And so will those weeks be extended? That is to be seen. But right now it's $350 a week for 12 weeks.
How are the benefits calculated?
So there is, Kenny referred to it a few moments ago, there is a base period associated with the worker. Their wages would be identified and a calculation is used about 12 months or 2 quarters, if you will. I guess that's a little bit longer of their wages would be used. And that's how you would come up with the amount. And so again, the maximum being $350 per week.
Yeah, you look at the wages earned in the last 2 quarters, and then you divide that number by 52, and that will give you the weekly benefit amount. But again, you may come up, so somebody who's making $1,000 a week, if you look at that, their weekly benefit amount could be $460 or thereabouts, but the maximum you can draw is $350 a week.
I think I have this right. As part of CARES, which is the federal coronavirus relief package, workers get on top of the state benefits an extra $600 in federal dollars. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And how long does that last?
That's going to run out the end of July, and it started on March 29th, and that's called the PUC, the Pandemic Unemployment Compensation piece of the CARES Act. So if anybody is drawing any amount of unemployment through the state, you're eligible for the $600 federal. In North Carolina, the minimum amount that you can draw per week is $15. Again, the maximum is $350. So if you're drawing $20 a week in unemployment in North Carolina, you can get $600 from the federal government on top of that.
Have you heard anything about what the war chest is how it's doing as far as the federal dollars are going? And I'm thinking same, it's part of the relief package. It's a different area though, that all the Small Business Administration loan money ran out this week, billions of dollars. Does the federal government have enough money to give $600? I don't know if that, I guess, is that different? Is it $600 for every worker across in the country?
Yes, yes.
And do they have enough money?
Yeah, and the states are running this. So I don't know the answer to your question, but to give you some insight on what you just said, each state had to set up their own system to be able to process this $600 a week. North Carolina just got theirs up and running a couple of days ago, but in the first 24 hours, North Carolina has given out $100 million of that federal $600 a week money.
Amazing.
So that's how quick it's evaporating.
Yeah. The federal stimulus package also extends the time workers can receive benefits. Do I have that right?
Right. That's called the PEUC, the Pandemic Emergency Unemployment Compensation. And it tacks on an additional 13 weeks of unemployment. So in North Carolina, you get your 12 weeks of state plus 13 weeks of federal, so for 25 weeks.
What if you're still employed, but your hours have been cut back? Do you still qualify for unemployment?
I'll give you an HR answer is yes, no, and maybe. North Carolina has a rule that used to be tied to the number of hours worked. They then changed it and they're tying it to a monetary amount. And we think that is still the same rule. Again, they've been back and forth on this. So the rule in North Carolina is you can earn in wages up to 20% of your weekly benefit dollar amount, and you will not be penalized in unemployment. If you earn more than that 20%, then you're penalized dollar for dollar. So let me give you an example. The maximum in North Carolina that you can draw in unemployment is $350 a week. If you take 20% of that, that's $70. So it's saying you can earn $70 in wages and still get $350 in unemployment. If you earn $71 in wages, your unemployment is reduced down to $349. So there's a dollar for dollar trade-off. But if you think about it, $70 is not a lot of money. So in essence, if somebody works maybe a few hours in a day, it starts cutting into their benefit cost.
In that same scenario where maybe somebody hasn't gotten laid off, their hours have just been cut back, do they also still get the $600 a week federal?
Yes. Again, if you're drawing any amount of state unemployment, you are eligible for the federal. So you could have somebody drawing $15 or $20 a week in state unemployment, and they get $600 federal on top of that.
It's kind of similar, but it's still different. What about if your unemployment, can you still get unemployment if your pay has been cut? So your hours haven't been reduced, but your pay has been cut.
We were on a conference call one day, I guess it was about 10 days ago, with the Department of Employment Security. And an answer is if you stay employed and if your pay has been cut, you are not eligible for unemployment. But we asked the question, but suppose your pay has been cut like 50 or 60 or 70%, And they said, we don't have an answer for that, but we're looking at it. You know, most people who are taking pay cuts is on the normal, 5, 10, 15, 20%. So the answer for that is definitely you would not be able to draw unemployment. But if it gets up to 50, 60, 70, we don't know the answer.
What if someone doesn't get laid off or furloughed, but that person refuses to go to work because they're afraid of contracting COVID-19? Can they still get benefits?
Very popular question. Trisha, I'm going to turn it over to you.
As Kenny said, it's a very popular question. And so from a strict answer, it would be no. They would be choosing to not go to work. There is work available. There is some concern in, okay, if they go and file unemployment and then that document going to the company and the company answering back that, no, I have work available for them, then they would not then be eligible for that unemployment. That's all going to rely on all the information being shared appropriately.
There are a lot of workers who did not used to qualify for benefits, but do now under the CARES Act stimulus plan. Who are these workers exactly, and what's available to them?
This is going to be the most complicated part of this new CARES Act and the unemployment. That's called the PUA, the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program. And it says that self-employed individuals and independent contractors, et cetera, may possibly be eligible for this. North Carolina told us the other day that it's going to be at least April 25th before they have a system that is set up to handle this. So let me give you a scenario of where it's going to be a little bit complicated. Marshall, let's say that you are a full-time student at UNC Charlotte, but on Monday afternoons, you take a side job driving for Uber a couple of hours and you make $50, $75, et cetera. And then on Thursday afternoons, you have a buddy who owns a landscaping company and you're doing a little landscaping work a couple of hours on this. So you're making money from two different sources. So in essence, you're the typical gig economy employee. The question comes down, you don't have your own company. It's not Marshall Incorporated there, so you don't have a business set up. This pandemic law says that you have to show that you lost your job due to COVID-19. Well, you're a full-time student. You're working 6, 8, 10 hours a week. How do you really prove that you lost your job due to COVID when really you're a full-time student and these jobs are part-time? So that's where it's going to be very, very complicated to administer. A lot of these gig workers, again, they don't have their own company set up, so they're getting 1099s from a variety of sources. So the government's got to set up some system. How much money did Marshall really make last year, and where did the money come from? That's why this is going to be the slowest piece of the puzzle to put together.
What if someone who is self-employed or a contractor, if they applied before the federal stimulus plan kicked in, let's say they applied for unemployment in early March, can these workers reapply even though they may have been denied?
They may have been denied originally. They can come back and reapply now. Yes.
And the federal stimulus program, that's the additional $600, the extended length of receiving benefits and the additional workers covered. Is North Carolina implementing them all now? I think you said.
Yes, they've already implemented the $600 per week. They have not yet implemented the additional 13 weeks because, again, the 12 weeks have not even run out at this particular point. And they're working on a system to develop the pandemic unemployment, for the independent contractors. And they are estimating that it's going to be the 25th of April before that system is up and running. And the key point is all of these are administered through the state. So even though it's federal money, it's the states that are having to implement systems to pay the money.
Going back to somebody that maybe has a side gig, and I wasn't sure if your answer was based purely on receiving federal benefits or state benefits, but if someone does have a side gig, a really popular one, or really one that a lot of people have right now is ride sharing services. When they apply for unemployment from the state, how do you know how to pay them based on their previous earnings?
Again, that's going to be the way they're having to. Right now, a large part of them probably are not going to be eligible because they may not have earned enough wages in their base period to be eligible for unemployment. So again, that's going to be the complicated part is tracking how much money have they truly earned in the past, the sources of this money, et cetera. And then the big part is to prove that they truly lost their job, or they were just busy doing other things and they didn't lose their job. That's going to be the big question right there.
Can green card holders who aren't U.S. citizens apply for unemployment?
In order to draw unemployment, you have to be authorized to work in the United States. So either you have to be a U.S. citizen or hold some type of work authorization that says you're eligible to work. And that's one of the things that this North Carolina notice that I was talking about that came into effect on April 14th is when you file your claim, you have to show that either you are a citizen or you have work authorization, the proper authorization to draw unemployment.
And would that person qualify for the federal payments as well?
Yes, yeah. Again, as long as you're getting state money, you're going to get federal money.
What if a person just started a new job and it was just worked only one day before COVID-19 hits, and then they file for unemployment? Do they still qualify?
Our understanding is no, because you have to have wages in the base period, and you have to earn at least 6 times your average weekly earnings during the base period in order to be eligible for unemployment. So generally, if you worked one day, so again, you graduated from college, you worked one day and lost your job, you don't have enough earnings in the base period to be eligible for state unemployment.
We touched on this a little bit early in the conversation. Are benefits going out at the usual pace or in North Carolina, or is there a lag because so many claims have been filed? I mean, do you know if the state is equipped to process such a huge surge? And we talked a little bit about what they're trying to do to speed that up, but yeah. I'd imagine it's a little slower than normal.
Well, we'll tell you what we're hearing from our member companies. And Trisha, I'll turn that over to you.
We are hearing about long waits and difficulty in getting through the process. I'm also hearing from companies that have gotten through the process and people are receiving their benefits. So it is taking time with the volume that's coming in, especially if somebody is trying to actually reach out and have a conversation or ask a question. We're hearing about long wait times and long time in response.
I want to go to a few questions that have come in on social media since we've been talking. Here's the first one. A worker in the military reserves who was let go from their civilian job can't file for unemployment because the state website is asking for discharge papers. What should that person do to get through to the state?
I don't know, Trisha, I'm going to turn that over to you. Do you have any idea?
And I'm not sure if I understand the question correctly. Their civilian job laid them off. Is that correct? And they're in military reserves and they're trying to file for unemployment based on their civilian job?
I believe that's what the question is asking, yes.
So if I'm understanding that correctly, their civilian job, it would be the normal process that we're talking about with everyone else, that they would just need to contact the Division of Employment and Security. Their veteran status might be hanging them up because there may be a misunderstanding at that level as to their status still with the military. Oftentimes there are ombudsmen, I have to say that slowly, services for veterans and people in the military. And so I would reach out in the military circles and find out who might be able to help me within the military to make contact and provide that information.
Should someone who is self-employed, a gig worker, or artist wait until April 25th to apply once the application is ready, or should they try and file now?
I don't think the procedures have even been set up on the website for them to apply at this point, is my understanding. So from what I'm gathering is that they're going to have to wait until the procedures are actually on the website to file. So it's going to be the 25th of the month.
Another question, will people still have to wait 14 days or will the money come more quickly?
Meaning the state money or the federal money, I wonder.
They did not specify. I guess maybe.
I'm often thinking, and what I'm hearing there is, there used to be that 1 week wait period that Kenny was referring to that's been waived. Yeah. And then there's a process time. And so it was usually about 2 weeks when you would see that first check. So with the 1 week wait period being waived, there could be benefit from day one, but it might take a few weeks for that first check to catch up because of the volume.
I've got one other question here. One Facebook viewer is asking about getting through to someone at the state. It's a question that we've been hearing a lot. Any advice for people having trouble navigating the state's website right now or reaching somebody by phone for help?
Well, it's a big problem. And as I mentioned earlier, I understand the state is trying to hire between 100 and 150 people to help with this claim process. So the answer is no. I mean, I hate to say it, you take a number and get in line and you just try. You know, there are people working round the clock, so you may have better luck at 10 o'clock at night rather than 10 o'clock in the morning in filing an online claim.
Just in general, what advice do you have for workers who are laid off?
Well, you know, the good news for them is they're in a much better position than they have been in recent memory from unemployment because of the $600 a week federal money. You're going to have a lot of people that are making, say, $45,000, $48,000 a year and below who will actually get a pay increase on this, or at least their wages will be held even. So the good news is you don't have to look for a job. You're going to be making decent money, and this money will last until the end of July. I mean, this is just scary, scary times. We've never seen anything like this. The thing that we don't know is how long is this going to last? It happened so quick. It's been going on, a month now. We think back to 2008, there are some similarities, but 2008 did not happen this quick. And generally, it wasn't a total shutdown like it is right now, where the restaurants are shut down, et cetera. A lot of places shuttered, for a week or two back in 2008, but they came roaring back after that. There are jobs out there. So for employees who want to go to work, you look at Amazon, Target, Walmart, the list goes on and on. I mean, there are lots of jobs in the distribution, warehousing, trucking, shipping type areas. The white collar jobs are kind of few and far between. So if you're looking for work, there are jobs out there.
We got another question in that's related to people being afraid to go to work because of over contracting the virus. What if one of our Facebook viewers wants to know, what if their doctor has told them to not go to work because of the virus?
Trisha, I'll let you talk about the emergency sick pay for a second.
So absolutely. There definitely are a lot of things to consider when a worker is suggesting that they can't or won't come to work, and whether they have a fear or they have an underlying condition. There's a lot that employers need to talk with those employees about and make the best decisions. So, in the first example where I'm just nervous and I'm not going to come in, is that going to be eligible for unemployment? Generally, no. If there is an underlying condition, my doctor says I shouldn't be there, there are some other benefits that may be available to pay that employee, but it would not be unemployment. And that was related to the first bill that was signed by the president back March 18th. And that's the Family First Response Act. And there are some sick benefits there, as well as some other extended benefits when you get into a child care issue.
Got another question. I'm sorry, were you going to say something?
Under that Families First Act, there's something called the Emergency Paid Sick Leave. And this is for companies that have less than 500 employees. So if a doctor says under doctor's orders, you have to self-quarantine, you may be able to receive 2 weeks compensation under that.
Another question that came in, is the federal $600, is that an automatic, or is that something that employees have to, people who are unemployed have to apply for?
Again, it's going to be automatic. So once you're drawing the state unemployment, it will immediately roll over to the federal. So it's not a separate application process for that.
A few questions back, I asked you if you had any advice for recently laid off workers. What about advice for employers going through all this right now? Any advice that you would offer them?
Well, I'll talk for a second, then I'll let Trisha chime in if she has anything else to add. I mean, this is just tough times where you're having to, either cut hours back or eliminate jobs, et cetera. And I'll say this, we went through this at the Employers Association just this week. So there are several things, you may have to reduce hours, you may have to reduce pay, you may have to, in essence, furlough people on a long-term basis, separate people. You need to sharpen your pencil for the employer's standpoint, because with this federal enhanced money, again, a lot of people making mid $40,000 and below, that in essence they can either keep their money whole or get a slight pay increase. So a lot of companies are a little more apt to put people on furlough or lay them off, knowing that their wages are going to be held constant probably through the end of July. So this is where employers need to make some tough decisions as to what actions they're going to take. Trisha, anything to add?
Absolutely. That's what my team has been doing for the past month, is having numerous conversations about what do employers need to think through. And to Kenny's point, there's math that you need to think about, and considering what do I want to do for my employees when it comes to, their pay and taking care of them, but also making sure that the business has what it needs and the right people in the right place, and how all that coverage is going to be done, and still have people as whole as possible for we don't know how long. So that is a conversation, and every business, every industry, everyone is going to have a different set of needs for that.
A question that we've had to answer a lot lately is, how do you pick and choose the people that you're going to furlough or lay off? And the example that Trisha and I talk about is, you've got 10 widget makers in your company and you only need 5 widget makers. How do you pick the 5 that are going to lose their job? And our suggestion is to set up some type of a grid so that you list all 10 names in a vertical manner. And then in a horizontal manner, you set up some criteria related to productivity and quality of work and attendance and cooperation and the number of jobs the person's qualified to hold. And you rate these 10 widget makers there. And the bottom line is, the bottom 5 performers are the ones that lose their job. You have to worry about the EEO laws right now, the age, race, sex, religion, et cetera. Are you eliminating people's jobs because of protected category or a legitimate business reason? And having some type of grid like this could be your salvation from a company standpoint, to show that you are eliminating people on objective factors rather than subjective factors.
Had a few more viewer questions come in since we've been talking here in the past few minutes or so. A Facebook viewer was laid off nearly 30 days ago and hasn't heard anything. What would you say to that person?
Oh, wow. Trisha, I don't know. You got any advice?
I guess my first question is, hasn't heard anything from DES, from the employer? Was an attached file made? Did they go and file themselves? Are they getting any information back? So, unfortunately, in our role, we have to ask a lot of questions. If they have filed everything and they feel like that they've done everything appropriately with the DES, then I would definitely be checking in with them to find out the status. I think that I've heard about some lengthy waits, but that seems like, if no response, that seems like a long time. And so I would start to wonder, do I need to press a button somewhere, or if there's something else going on? If an attached claim, or if your employer was involved, get with your employer and ask if they have done. Keep in mind that people who filed a month ago were filing likely for themselves. The process is that's received at DES, and then information goes back to the employer for them to fill in and provide those wage information. And then that goes back and has to be processed. So there is some time that is needed there.
I've not heard of anybody having to wait 30 days for a check, though.
Yeah, I haven't heard that. So I would definitely start trying to get a hold of somebody to find out where the holdup is.
Got one other question here. Can someone hold out for a job in their industry, or do they have to take anything that comes their way? Now, I believe that question is referring to just unemployment claims in general, when there is a searching for work requirement, as we've mentioned, that's been suspended for right now. But I guess in general, does somebody have to do that?
Well, under the old rules, yes, you had to be applying for X number of jobs per week, and you had to show proof in order to continue receiving unemployment benefits. But as of, what, 3 weeks ago, I guess it was, that rule is off the table now.
Yeah. Well, even before all this happened, is that does a person just have to take the first job that gets offered, or can they wait till something?
No, there's some rules related to that. And again, I just don't remember them off the top of my head, but it talks about suitable employment. And if you look at North Carolina general statutes in the 96 range, 96 point something another, it talks about North Carolina unemployment, and there is a definition of suitable employment in there.
Kenny, Trisha, is there anything that I missed, anything that I should have asked?
I think you covered it.
Well, that's Kenny Colbert, President and CEO of the Employers Association, and Trisha Ridenour, Director of Human Resources, also of the Employers Association. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for having us.
I'm Marshall Terry. This has been a special Facebook Live answering your questions about unemployment. For more, you can visit the Your Questions Answered page on our COVID-19 blog, which you will find at WFAE.report. Thanks.